Hi, today I'm going to show you how I make one of the grains that we frequently like to have in our fridge as a just staple grain to um, add to some vegetables and maybe some legumes for a simple dinner. Sometimes we throw some condiments on there. And also just eat plain or mix with a banana for almost like a sweet breakfast option. And that is buckwheat. So sometimes I get the roasted buckwheat, sometimes I get the raw groats. It doesn't really matter. They taste very similar. Um, and it's whatever is easily available and cheapest for me. So I'll show you how I do that. Super simple in the Instapot. Okay, so all we'll need is a measuring cup, an Instapot, though you can do this on a pot on the stove. It just requires a lot more babysitting to turn the temperature down and things like that. But the amount of water I'm using and even the cooking time itself will actually be about the same as what I find works on stovetop. And then I have some containers to put the cooked groats in ready. This is just going to hold whatever's left that I don't use today. I'm going to end up starting with 2 cups of dry groats. So I'll show you what this looks like. So this isn't even really a recipe, I know, but a lot of people I find in the plant-based community just say, I eat oat groats, I eat buckwheat groats, I eat brown rice, and a lot of people just don't even know how to cook those up. So I'm just hoping to kind of fill that gap of where people are a little bit overwhelmed or they're a little bit afraid of the Instapot. And it's just so helpful. So I'd like to just make this a little bit simpler. So these are the buckwheat groats I have at home right now. I just bought these on Amazon. I think they came in a 6 or 12 pack. And I just use up one bag at a time and store them like this. We go through them fairly quickly. So I think these are actually just raw groats, but sometimes I've bought them for a really good price in like a European market, especially when I'm in Canada. They have a Ukrainian butcher, I think it is actually, but they eat a lot of roasted buckwheat there. Sometimes it's called kasha, and so it's like a really good price, and that works equally well and tastes great. So I usually measure out 2 cups of dry groats. That makes 4 containers for us that we can just reheat them. You can do however much you want. Super simple. And I do not rinse them. I think a lot of people talk about, rinse the grain first, and I don't do that. I'm all about simplicity and ease. We don't mind the product without doing that. It's the end product, so that's just what I do. And I love these OXO measuring cups. I've had them for like 16 years, I think. I use them all the time. So it doesn't have to be super precise, but this is 2 cups. I'm going to take out my insert, just toss that in here. And then I personally, again, this is like the brown rice video I made in the quinoa video. You can experiment with what amount of water works for you. I do not find that in the Instapot you need way less water, at least for our altitude and what, I don't know, I guess what we like. So I use about the same amount of water I'd use on the stovetop. When I had tried initially, when I got the Instapot and I tried to follow the recipes that came with the guide, or the pot itself, the guide for it, I tried their water times and it was like literally hadn't cooked at all. So I'm going to add 3 times as much water as I had buckwheat groats. So it was 2 cups buckwheat groats. I'm going to add 6 cups water. I do warm water so it comes to pressure quicker. That's a really wet buckwheat groat for us. That's just how we like it. If you wanted a little kind of, I guess, chewier in the sense of like more like super separate, well, still pretty separate grains, but if you don't want it as kind of fluffy and as, I guess, watery, as puffed up, it does also work with roughly 2 times as much water as buckwheat groats, but I personally like the 3 times as much. So I'm going to go do that, and then I'll just show you how I turn this on. It's super easy. Okay, so water, groats, all in the Instapot. And this is an older Instapot, so my settings might look slightly different than yours, but the basic principles are the same. I don't use any of the fancy settings. I just use pressure cook, and I close it following the arrows, so just completely close it until you can't turn it anymore to the right or clockwise. And then I turn this, it's very loose, I put it to sealing, which is how it's going to come to pressure. If you have it on venting, all the liquid will just evaporate and it'll kind of burn on the bottom. Nothing terrible happens, but it's just not going to work. So put it on sealing. And then what I'm going to do for buckwheat, it's actually one of the faster grains for us. Again, some people would say, oh, just 2 minutes. I don't find that. So we put it on for 12. That's about right. Sometimes 13, 12. And I'm going to start it right away. I'm not going to delay start. Okay. And then I'm just going to let it come to pressure, cook for 12 minutes, and then I'll let it naturally pressure release, which usually for a batch this size takes maybe 25 minutes after it's done cooking, depending on the temperature of our home and stuff. And then I'll just scoop it into these containers. Just a few tips if you don't have an Instapot and you want to just kind of dip your feet into this world of different whole grains and you want to use a stovetop. A couple of tips for you. It could be helpful to rinse the grain first because it sort of gets rid of the part of the starch that tends to boil over. If you ever have made grains on the stovetop, it's one of the reasons I love the Instapot. I had such a mess almost every time that I boiled grain because the thing is when you have your grain, you have your water, you cover it with a lid, turn it on high, bring it to a boil. Soon as it starts boiling, you have to immediately turn it down to low. And if you don't, it boils over. That's my experience at least. So first of all, I would use a big pot and I would babysit it. As soon as I would put it on high and as soon as it comes to boil, you want to turn it to low. One trick to know with whole grains, once you see it's boiling, leave the lid on. Do not stir it and do not lift the lid. So that's what will make it stick. That's what will make it gummy. It doesn't turn out well. So never stir it, never lift the lid off. And what will happen is it actually cooks really beautifully then, right at 12 minutes. Again, take it off the burner. I right away open it usually and then scoop it. Or you could leave it steaming in the pot a little bit, but take it off the burner for sure, right on time. It's one of the reasons I no longer cook almost anything other than pasta on the stovetop and like pancakes that I make on the stovetop. Because the Instapot is just so much easier. Once you set it, you do not need to babysit it at all. I try to catch the grains about when they naturally pressure release, but the truth is sometimes I've forgotten about it or just gotten busy or I don't know, just various things happen and it sits in the pot for like 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours sometimes, and it's still fine. And there's no mess on my countertop. There's not even a mess on the inside of the lid. So I just find it so convenient and way less mess. And it always turns out for me. So that's my plug for Instapot over stovetop. But if you don't want to invest yet, those are some of the tips I have for cooking whole grains on the stovetop. Don't stir it, don't open the lid, and you need to babysit it so that you get the timing right, and hopefully then you won't have a mess or burned grain. So my mic wasn't working, so I already scooped it out, but I'll just show you. This is nice and fluffy, looking really good. You'll kind of see the grain is more of a triangular shape almost. I use this sometimes even in burger recipes. It has a really nice nutty flavor. I love this. Is one of my absolute favorite grains, actually. It's one of the ones I eat most frequently. I also find it digests really, really well, and it's naturally gluten-free. We also sometimes incorporate it into a pancake batter I make. So I just typically scoop it into 4 containers, and we let these just cool. I cover them, and then I let them cool on the counter. Put them in the fridge for us just to reheat. I like using glass generally because I like reheating it in the microwave in the glass containers, but I'm a little low today, so these plastic ones that we usually reserve for travel come in handy as well. And this is just how I store my open bag of grains. I tend to just store them in mason jars. So I hope you found this video helpful. Please consider liking and subscribing and leave a comment below sharing some tips about how you like to keep things simple and maybe some of the grains that you enjoy using in your own cooking at home.